Hello guys, this will be a deck tech video for decks with the new cards added recently to the game, the Simmering Sextuplet. And we're going to start with Iona's Smile decks. Draw 2 top flying creatures in your deck. So the first deck I have here is a green-yellow fairies deck. So you want to pull out your fairies with the smile. If you have a sky captain on board, it's even better because they gain buffs. Then you also have more flying legendaries, which are pretty nice. You can also pull them with the Time of Legend. Earthcraft for some faster lands and to trigger fairies. Buffs are always nice and events as well. And then of course Flashwind for some mobility, which is nice with the flying charge creatures. Then very straightforward flyers deck. With this deck you just go for 2 deserts, one left and one on the right side of your orb, and then you can just play your flying creatures, don't even need to go for more land, so you can draw with the wheel or gain +1 Faeria if you really need that. Celestial Tower is very important because your creatures have flying but they have low mobility, so you want to give them charge free. And then you can go for some nice trades, maybe even double collect. Skyguard is nice because you can play him aggressively without lands and also sometimes between the wells. Sky Captain is probably your best opening card, and you want to play Sky Captain into Iona's Smile to get all the juicy buffs. Maybe you can cut the Emperor's Command and add a Choking Sand if you want, but yeah. Next one is a net flying smile deck, also pretty similar in playstyle. You gain a bit more value out of these nets than other creatures, especially if you have an aviary for the damage buffs, but it's risky because you go low on life. That's why you need the commands for heal maybe, and even the radiance can be decent here. It's not running Doomgate because it's maybe a bit too slow and you would also go too low on health. Next up, Sacrifice Smile. This is a really fun deck, very unique approach to a sacrifice deck. Shadeness isn't as strong anymore with Emperor's Command in the game, unfortunately, but this deck has insane late game scaling. Every time a net dies, not only a Wild Avengers grows by 1 health, but also the Soul Eater. So late game your combo is to let this net die pretty often. You can use Doomgate in order to sacrifice the nets, they come back all the time, so you take damage, then your Wild Avengers grow. If Wild Avengers are high health, you can use the Feed the Forest to sacrifice them. Iona's Smile will help you pull out your nets early game, and also late game it will give you the Soul Eaters that in some matchups you might even want to sacrifice just to play other stuff, or sometimes you just play them as big finishers. If you have a Wild Avengers first that you can Feed the Forest, you can easily gain the Faeria to summon like 2 or sometimes even 3 if you have them on hand. In some versions I cut the Village Elders for Wind Soldiers. Helps you early game removal, but Village Elder makes your early game a bit smoother and consistent if you don't have nets for sacrificing. So our next decks will be built around Illusion of Grandeur. So this card is very hard to get going. It's pretty fun. We have some 1-cost creatures with the Fishers and the Darkstalkers for the buffs, but you also have Nobles, which you can Aurora Creation. And if you Aurora Creation the Nobles, you can get the 5/5 buff on your illusions. If for some reason you get them really big early on without creation, you can even copy another illusion to get a big creature. This deck has lots of small creatures like Fishers and Battletoads, so you really want the Mirror Phantasm to buff these creatures to solid stats. That's why we also have Mythmaker with Time of Legends, so you just always have the buffs ready, some movement tricks as well as a draw effect to get your Darkstalkers buffed, and Spellware basically does the same thing. This idea is inspired by Selling Fox, pretty cool. Then another way to make the illusion work is with cost reduction in forms of Ogre Dance and Bargain. This is probably one of the ways to get your biggest illusions. It works on every 8-cost creature or 7-cost. also lower but not as effective. Baron, Farga, and Magnus are just great other ways to get your cards reduced. And then you have some AoE just to don't get overwhelmed. Mirror Phantasm can be used to buff your farm boys or your bargainers, but it can also be used as counter to other big creatures. But it's the card you could replace the likeliest with something like a King's Guard or a Queen's Guard. And then the Tail of Illusion deck. So Tail of the Old Turtle, you reduce your creatures by 2. That's why you want lots of 3 drops with nice stats. And the 2 drops in forms of Sturdy Shell also get reduced by Ancient Herald. So if you play Herald and then get the Shell, you can give your illusion a 5 health buff. And so does the Mystic Beast, gives him also 5 health buff, 2 attack. That's why it's important to have high attack 3 drops, which give you the main source of attack. Sometimes you can use enchantment to buff your illusion's attack if you only had Mystic Beast and Shelled as reduction. So yeah. Next up we have the Deepwood Stalker decks. So Deepwood Stalker here, fight an enemy creature. So this card is pretty nice if you buff it on hand. Divine Guardian also synergizes with hand buffs because it's immune to remover. The Divine keyword cannot be targeted. And you can also eat your Divine Guardian with Voice of Hunger. This deck is incredibly fun to play. Of course, you can also eat Oaklings. You have Spirit of Rebirths for even more hand buffing. And the Wood Elemental is just very nice because you run out of card draws. Making forests with a creature means you can use an ability wheel to make more, to gain more draws. And Bone Collector, of course, synergizes with all the sacrifice and destroy your own creature effects. And then Court Jester for even more hand buffs. This deck is really fun. Voice Stalker, this is basically just the Voice of Truth shell, where you have big creatures that you can heal up. Very good value. And then you have Deepwood Stalker in there, which basically works as Soul Drain or Cypher's Wrath. It's just 2 damage, but it's not as synergetic, of course. And then we have a combined version. So I combined Illusion of Grandeur together with Deepwood Stalker in the deck. And this is the outcome. You can use Fail Experiment on Oaklings, so they cost 1 Faeria. That means your illusion gets buffed. This way, if you use Fail Experiment Oakling, it's very easy to target Deepwood Stalker if your hand is rather empty. Also, you can use Creation to buff to get even more Oaklings if you really want to. Maybe you could fit in like 1 or 2 Feet the Forests, cut maybe Lore Thief and some Earthcraft, but it's a nice cycle to get your combos. Also, what you can do is you can Aurora's Creation on Eredon. So if you Aurora's Creation on Eredon, you have more of these. You can also Creation Mythmaker, but they are definitely more of a meme deck. Darkstalker is also very easy to trigger your illusion, but yeah, this deck would probably be better if you just cut illusion and add some other stuff, but we want to showcase the new cards here. And yeah, next we have the decks built around Croc's Dinner. And if you build a deck around Croc's Dinner, it's actually built around Croc, the Ogre King. Croc's Dinner just lets you summon Croc for 5 Faeria after spending 3 Faeria on Croc's Dinner. This one is built around the combat synergy. That's why I even choose Herald of War over X-Grinders. Some AoE just to be safe. Cypher's Wrath, but no Flame Burst because you just want to go more for the creatures here. And then all the good combat guys work well together with Gift of Steel. And of course you can use Gift of Steel also to buff Croc. Silent Horsemaster for mobility, because that's important with combat creatures. And then one of Barracks just to have some nice trade potential. You don't use really Croc here for the 7 cost reduction, even though that's nice. But it's mainly just the big creature that you want to buff, which is of course weak to hard remover. Then a Meteor Croc deck, also making use of the new Divine Guardian card. It's basically a farm boy just with 1 more Faeria cost, but much more sturdy early game. And here you actually use Croc for the reduction. So you can play your Meteors cheaper, you can maybe get reduction on Red Devils, Hellfire Bargainer, etc. etc. Though the problem with this is it's very hard to get Croc in a fighting position. Your opponent can often just run away, ignore him. But yeah, that's one of the ways I would make a bargain Meteor Croc deck work. And then Croc's Illusion. It's kind of a fun brew I threw together just a couple of minutes ago. So of course Croc is here, very nice. But you use Croc in order to get reduction on all your big creatures together with Illusion. So whenever Croc fights, you might reduce an Ice Rock Behemoth, which buffs the Illusion. Whenever Croc fights, you might reduce a Cypher, you might reduce a Bargainer, and so on. And then of course you have Magnus and Baron. And yeah, the idea is you play your Croc in front of your orb, and then you in best case buff him with enchantment, and then you can even shoot face for 12 damage if you have a cannon carrier. Of course it's very gimmicky, but like it's just a Croc deck, you have to be gimmicky. And finally there will be another more fun deck, the Yak Stalker. So it's a Deepwood Stalker deck with also some Yak synergy. It's very nice that Deepwood Stalker gets the buffs from Tiki Totem and Cobalt Barracks before you can trigger the gift ability. So if you play this next to a barracks, he will get the attack damage. He will also get attack damage from your Longhorn Yaks. Longhorn Yaks synergize with barracks, so does Yak attack with the haste ability. And then also you can sometimes get the buff on your Divine Guardians, you can get the buff on your Willows. You have the Oakling Feet combo, which can buff your Yaks, which is nice, can buff your Stalkers, which is nice, and it can even buff your Divine Guardian, which is not bad. But yeah, this is much more of a fun deck. So I hope you liked this video. Maybe try some of the decks I showcased here. And thanks for watching. Bye bye.